Today's topic would be about the database closure. So we have seen the concept of drug delivery, development process and how the phases of clinical trial designs are to be done and how I'm going to get the approvals from the regulatory authorities for conducting my trials and how the projects will be handled from a CDM perspective. We have seen the many of the concepts, and once we collect the data, validate the data, cleaning the data to be make it consistent and all the data have been collected as per the protocol requirement. The final part is I need to lock the database, which means I need to close the database so that there won't be any further entry. And the final data will be given for the analysis team for to create the TLFs. Okay. So for that, you need to give a clean data, and this database closure is a key important milestone for any clinical trial project. Before we move into the full concept, I thought of sharing you this quote. It's one small step for a man, but it's a one giant leap for a mankind. So it's for you people. So you're going to get in, to step into the clinical data management or the clinical research industry. For you, it might be a simple step, but for the mankind, it will be a great impact. So whatever activity that you're going to do is should be of quality and it should help the mankind. Let me introduce about the database closure. It's one of the crucial aspects of the research in the clinical data management or the clinical trial. So proper clinical data management activities will generate results with excellent quality, integrity, and reliability of the data. So the quality data is essential in order for us to support the final conclusions of the certain study for the hypothesis that has been put forward. So the person responsible for this area is called a clinical data manager. So their job is to be filled, I mean, uh, by a principal investigator or study coordinator or a CRA. No matter who fills this position at your site, the data management has to be done promptly and correctly in order to generate the best results for your trials. So, aside from all the other reasons why data management is so important, it's also what determines the future IP, that is the investigational product development. This is more important. So, on the subject of the clinical data, the most important term is database log. So, we will explain as to what is database log and the purpose of this practice. So, how efficient the database log would be and what are the benefits that we can obtain as part of your database log for your clinical trial. So, this is the concept that we are going to see in today's session. So, part of overview. Um, So once your last patient data has been collected from the site, that is after your last patient last visit, we call it as LPLV. The race for us is to close the database and lock the study for further analysis. So this is an important step that any sponsor wanted to have the results. So it's like I write all my exams and waiting for results. So this is the stage where we will be waiting for our results, right? So once the study has been logged, the final analysis can be made and conclusions can be drawn. So it's a usually high pressure to make those analysis, which means we will be under greater pressure to see whether our trials is a pass or a fail. So companies usually frequently keep track of time to database log, which is one of the key metrics that needs to be followed, and they work constantly to minimize that time. I can say during COVID times, we have done the database log within the last patient last visit that they have completed. We have logged the database within a week's time. Cleaning the database and some of the um, trials actually got good results and it passed and the hypothesis were proved. Okay. So it depends upon the requirement of the project and how far we can minimize the time. It is actually good for the project so that there won't be any changes that happens post the data that has been received. So the pressure to quickly lock a database for analysis comes up against a long list of time-consuming tasks that need to be performed first. So the list involves many individual steps, including the collection of final data, resolving the outstanding queries, reconciling against other database, and performing the final quality control or the quality review process. Once these tasks are performed, the study is considered locked. That is, no data value will be changed and the data will be considered ready for the analysis. So usually specific conditions which can lead to unlocking a database, restriction on what can be changed during the time it is unlocked, and the requirements must be met before it can be relocked. So this is a separate process which we'll discuss at the end. So my objectives after completing this module, I should able to understand what is a database lock and unlock procedures, why it is needed, and what are the steps that are involved for my database lock and unlock. So dealing with the errors found after database lock and what are the critical and the non-critical errors. So these are the things that we wanted to learn while I complete this session. So this is a key factor which everyone should understand before I database lock for a study. There should not be any unlocking happen for a database. So this is an important metrics for anyone who works as a clinical data manager. So if you unlock, okay, so it means you have uh, it's like a metrics that we have as a performance indicator, right? So we need to try to have the database lock in a perfect manner, a manner that so that we don't have any unlocks done post my DB lock. So unlocking of database may change the fate of the entire product and it may delay the product release into the market. So we should be very cautious with this aspect of unlocking. So we have seen a gist of what is database closure and lock. So it is a crucial practice which is necessary to order to prevent the authorized, unauthorized or unintentional changes after the final data has been received. And these are the different steps which will help if I close the database. One is it prevents the unauthorized access. Then the PI signs all the data from the beginning until the end the data has been collected. Important in blinded trials is to prove my integrity after breaking my trial, which means since the data cannot be changed, if I can unblind the study, the integrity would be maintained because no one can edit any data after the unblinding process. And all trials are required to have a structured and a well-defined process to close the database, which means each organization should have some standard operating procedures for this process to happen in a very structured and well-defined way. So as I said, it's a additional it's a state of clinical database where no further changes can be expected. And the trial data doesn't permits anyone to enter any of the information, which means we will revoke all the access for the clinical database. So all the user access will be revoked. And we also ensure that the data is complete, accurate, and consistent, which says I declare a data clean. And after the final review is done, the database lock is required to make my analysis ready data. So why we actually require this database lock? So study database must have access removed, which I told, and it should be properly closed to ensure the data integrity so that None of the information gets changed so that it reduces the data breach or integrity of the study data, which can generate the real results and it can provide me the real results for my analysis. And then I can proceed for my submission. So, at the culmination of a clinical study, the database locking and closing procedures are imperative to prevent any inadvertent or unauthorized data changes prior to analysis and reporting. In case of a blinded study, as I said, the procedures after unblinding, there should not be any data change, which means I'm manipulating my data. So this will help me in the database lock after the unblinding happens. So these are some of the types of DB locks we have in any clinical trials. We have the interim lock for which the interim analysis to be done. Soft lock in case before I proceed with the final lock, I will actually soft lock in the sense no data can be entered further, but the TLF analysis can start happening at that time. It's like a dry run. We can say it's a dry run to ensure that I can proceed for the final lock. So this will ensure actually we do not unlock the database. Okay. So after I have the final log and then I unlock and update the data, it is not good as I said. Hence, this soft lock will help us to analyze any errors or anything that has been there in the database. If at all we identify any issues during my analysis, this will be rectified before my final log. So that is the reason we usually have a soft lock. And we have the final lock, and finally after the lock process we have the entire database closed up. So interim lock is for like a snapshot of the database at a particular point of time mentioned. So the study will still progress, but this interim analysis will give us a heads up as to how the clinical study is progressing, whether the design is correct or is there any design I need to modify further to get a clear results. Okay, so this is called a interim block. Soft block, as I said, it's done for a dry runs or we or can do this for other activities like DSMB, DMC, etc. DSMB is nothing but Data Safety Monitoring Board review, which reviews the safety data of a clinical trial from a safety aspect. And DMC is Data Monitoring Committee, so they review the entire data that is coming in. So at times, if they require, we need to soft lock the database. The entire hard lock will not happen. So in case if any issues are identified, we can edit the data. So the final lock is like a hard lock and it refers to processes used to remove access to the database and ensure no further changes can be made by anyone. And the final lock is a key process of database closure, but not only the process needed to close a database properly. So once I do this lock, the final process is the database closure, which refers to the process used to finalize the database. I will take a snapshot like this is the time it has been closed and the deliverables will be provided to the analysis team. So there are some minimum standards I need to follow for my database closure activity. So establish clearly documented procedures defining all the steps of database lock, database closure. In case of unlocking or relocking, I need to define that specific items and I need to document signed off and need to lock or unlock and relock. And I need to clearly define all the roles with respect to the responsibilities they have, which is involved within the database lock and closure procedures. And prior to any database lock, it might be an interim soft or a spinal locks. I need to ensure documentation of all the defined tasks are completed as per organizational processes. So at my final database lock, I need to ensure all team members are notified and access, which allows the database changes is removed and documented. So we have a database closure checklist, which we need to follow. So as a best practice for the process to go in a very smoother way, I need to clearly define all the terms relating to my interim log, which means I need to define the each and every step that I should check before I proceed for the database closure. So develop and utilize a database closure checklist, maintain a documentation and approval or acknowledgement documents which require signatures of all responsible parties. And where indicated, there should be a plan for interim or a soft lock with a statistical analysis and a data review prior to the final lock. So this review may identify potential data errors, preventing the need to unlock the database after the final unlock. So the most important steps before my database lock, the crucial thing to remember about the database lock is I need to plan well. So planning ahead of time and while the data is still fresh, and we can make new preparations, a lot easier. So this is especially true for trials with large volumes of data. So if we don't have a carefully planned clinical data management plan, then things get pretty messy at the time of database lock for us. Okay, so it has to be in a planned manner. The frequency and other things have to be maintained so that we are not put down during our final database lock activities. So the step one is I need to make sure that all the data have been received from the site. After that, all the data have to be processed, which means I need to review the data, raise queries, resolve the queries, etc. So every single query that has been raised, right, by the medical team, the data managers, as well as the CRAs has to be resolved. Then step four, any reconciliations that are there, like the safety data lab or any other external data like PKPD or CTMRI immunogenicity, I need to reconcile with my CDMS and I need to say that both data are matching. And as a final step, the quality audit check. So this is as per the organizational policy. In some, they will perform the DB log audit before the DB log happens. Whereas in some of the organizations, only if it is scoped for, the QA will perform this audit. So as part of an internal activity, we will have a quality review done. We will ensure whatever DM process that has been carried out is perfect, like query management, listings review, and there are other documentation perspective. We will review that. So once I have done with all these activities, I am ready for the final closure. So after the final check from the authorized person, the edit access of the study base database will be removed, and it will remove date. The removal date should be documented, which is very important. And this is the point where the database lock happens. So here's a lock checklist. So every study should have a database closure checklist that should be closely followed to ensure all required tasks have been performed, right? So I need to have what are the pending action items. I need to see what are the interim locks performed, what are the other things that are pending for this, and soft locks in between. For the final lock, I need to see the SA reconciled, the other external data are reconciled, review for data anomalies quality. So this is a actually it's not only with DM, but from the perspective of medical monitors, the CRAs, everyone has to adhere to this policies and ensure all the queries are resolved and we get a proper data for the final log. So finally, the database is closed and it is released for analysis. So post your CSR development, the entire EDC or the CDMS would be decommissioned. So here's the trends with the past and present I have given. So as a historical approach, usually the DB logs usually happens at the end of study. Whereas the current practice, we have the frequent database logs as needed, like interim logs or DSMB logs, etc. So the common site staff campaign as an added pressure, but it benefits the sponsors as well as the person who conducts the trials. So, for example, if I say some quarterly logs in a huge population study, which enables timely data evaluation, so data will be logged as and when the entire training is completed. It helps decide if the study should continue or end. And this will help us to reduce the cost for the sponsor, identifies any ineffective drugs or any drug which creates a serious advance. So these are the benefits for the sponsors, like the current practice that we have. As part of the technological evaluation, the past was limited by the paper CRF, whereas in your present, this activity actually enables, since it's a electronic case report form, and it saves time and money for the persons who has the database logs done on a frequent mode. So you can have some adaptive design to have a very good results for your hypothesis. So as I said, how beneficial is my database log? So the impact of frequent database logs creates pressures as well as it creates prompts. Okay, so frequent database logs is a pressure for all the staff and it might include additional costs if necessary. And however, this when we compare to the benefit, actually it encourages timely and accurate data entry by the site person. So as I said, the benefits, it promotes adherence to data entry requirements on time. It results in cleaner and a more organized data at a database closure point. So this is the overall impact which has facilitates a smoother data management and finalization for the DB logs which are done intermittently. So this is the overall process where I need to discuss about the DB lock and the unlock process. So DM is provided with the username password. The DM log into the database. They work for the entire process and locks it after completion. Access will be revoked for the entire group after I lock the study. And in case of any findings, which means of data issues, then it should be categorized as critical issue or a non-critical issue. So for a non-critical issue, we can say that I can go with a no to file, or I can say there is no requirement of an unblock. But in case of a critical data, the study DB may be unblocked. I will not say as should be unblocked. I can say may be unblocked because the team has to evaluate whether it is really mandatory for the data to be updated, even though it is critical. Because as I said, unlocking process is actually a metrics for an organization as well. So how should you deal with errors found after the database lock? I have given the steps to handle and the document these errors should be carefully considered. The foremost thing is the potential effect of the errors on the analysis of safety and efficacy parameters should be evaluated or investigated first. Not all errors require changes in database, which I do. Errors at times gets only documented in the plan, the report, without any changes made in the database. Although some trial sponsors choose to change all the errors found, others may change only whatever is mandatory, or it might have some data with the safety and efficacy analysis. So it's of prime importance that a company implements a predefined process to determine how such errors can be handled and documented. The steps process involved in any database unlock should be carefully controlled and documented, and each of the snapshot for each activity should be taken. Procedure should include the notification of the project team about with a clear definition of the changes being made and the date of change with on which it happens. Then the relocking of the database involves the same process as we did for the DB closure activities. So after that, I need to have the database lock done again. So let's see what are the important types of errors. We call them as critical and the non-critical error. The critical error needs to be corrected and updated in the database, and unlocking is done. So even for this case, we are just evaluating nowadays. If it is of utmost importance only, then we will unlock the database. Otherwise, we will won't go for any unlocks. In case of a non-critical error, it's straightforward. We need not update the database. It is documented in your DB log checklist, DB memo, or whatever form name that has been provided in your organization. So we will document that and we will process non-critical error. Some types of critical errors are within the adverse event form, the medications, labs, vital signs, etc. So any error on these modules usually subject to a critical error, and critical error form should be filled in. So this critical error form can be named with some other things, but usually we need some documentation. So I need to document the critical error and the non-critical error. So the types of non-critical errors, some of the dates, the physical examinations, pregnancy information, etc. We call them as a non-critical errors, and we need not have any unlocks done for the same. So while I document this errors, I need the patient number for which the study is getting unlocked, the CRF module due to which the study is unlocked, the page, visit name, which page number, the visit number, line, etc. If applicable, I need to document that. The variable to be updated should be updated. Then the incorrect data, what the data should be corrected, I need to inform that. And the DQF is the question type and the number if there is any um, data quality form that has been raised. In case if you have done that, like critical error form or a non-critical error form, you need to document that. Then date the study database corrected, verified, and we need to take a screenshot of that and then proceed for the database log again. So this is about the database closure activity. I can say this session might be simple, but the process is really tedious from the experience. I can say it would be so much of pressure that people will work day and night to get the database locked, because each and every query to get responded by set is really difficult for them to make them understand what is actually required. And this is how people are locking the database. It's my personal experience as well, I would say.